Now, one of the things we need to talk about is our ability to download and upgrade AP's firmware, right? We have a Cisco equipment, we buy Cisco equipment. Does that stop the firmware process? Do they stop developing that piece of hardware? And the answer to this, of course, is no. They continually work on equipment even after it's been put out in the real world. So we need a way to update to the latest firmware. This helps us with security patches and maybe even added features or bonuses that they may put out for us a little more stable. So how do we do this? How do we upgrade the firmware of our APs in our environment? Well, there's a really cool way to do this. There is a smart AP image upgrade that really does help the process along. Instead of going along and doing each AP individually, we can set up a centralized system to kind of have all the APs of a same model type look at our environment. So first off, what's first on our list? I'm going to grab a little pointer here. Follow the bouncing red dot, all right? So first off, we say download the wireless LAN controller upgraded firmware, okay? This means it will become the primary environment. So we're going to download the latest firmware. Who we're going to download it from? Cisco, obviously. You don't want to use a third-party site here. Go straight to the source. If you are administering a closed environment, go out of the closed environment into an open environment, get the firmware, and then follow your organizational procedures in order to bring that into your environment. Sometimes that's a lot more difficult than it sounds. You may have to have somebody look at the firmware before it's installed. You may even, I've seen this in some environments, have to go to the vendor itself and receive the vendor's upgraded firmware in person. It just depends on your environment. There's some really stringent security rules out there. Okay, so next up, we're going to force the boot image to be the secondary, okay? The secondary. And this to avoid parallel download of all AP if there was an unexpected wireless LAN controller boot. So why are we doing this as the secondary? Because what if there's a power shutdown in the environment and the power comes back on as we are doing this? If it's set as the primary, all of a sudden what we would end up doing is we would have every AP doing this firmware upgrade at the same time. This is what they call a parallel download. We don't want that to happen in our environment. We want much more control over this process. So that's why we want you to set this as a secondary and not the primary. Next up, the wireless LAN controller elects a master AP in each FlexConnect group. So in this one, we have two FlexConnect groups down here. Remote site, let me grab a pencil. Remote site 1 and remote site N. Okay, we have two sites. And we have one master AP here and one master AP here. We have two master APs, one per FlexConnect group. Now, what's not listed here is the fact that we also need this one per model. If we have a different model number, totally different models on the floor that are managed, we are going to need different firmware per model. So there'll be a different master per model. But in most cases, most of your environments, it's pretty ubiquitous, right? You're using X model. So you will have one image for X model.